Let's take a look now at why some government reports are not released to the public and how they should be. Joining us is a political analyst from the Right to Know campaign, Mckinley. Always good to talk to you, and thank you.
Thank you.
Earlier this evening, the Ahmed Foundation calling for the probe, the DG's probe, to be made public. They have concerns that it won't be. Do you share those sentiments?
Absolutely. And what we have is in some ways, a very contradictory situation where things that are obviously very sensitive information or sensitive reports get stuck in the back corners, and particularly the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence in Parliament in terms of the Mckinley report and others. And so while you might tick the parliamentary box and say we're doing oversight, it's not accessible to the public, and it's certainly not accessible to the average person. In
fairness to the DG's probe, and we can talk about the composition of the probe in just a moment, but they say that 7 days perhaps isn't enough time. They need more time. Are we not jumping the gun here a bit?
No, I don't think so. I think these kinds of reports, inquiries, there's been a whole slew of them over the last several years, are fundamentally in the public interest. And the question I think that the DG and the government needs to answer is, why is it that they want to hold them in the dark corners? Why is it that they don't want to release this information? What is it there that is of national security proportions that people cannot know? I think that's the fundamental issue.
Were the Directors General themselves the right people to probe this initially, given that government could be seen as being both a player in the scandal and a referee?
Absolutely not. And I think in most cases what has always been called for is an independent inquiry. We can't have the fox guarding the hen, so to speak, in that context. And in that sense, government has every right to do their own inquiry. But if we want to get to the bottom of things and then to be able to have that information released to the public, then it needs to be an independent, and the political strings don't need to be pulled in those cases.
What, in your opinion, is the key question that this particular investigation needs to answer?
Which one are you talking about in particular?
The DG's
particular investigation. Look, I think it needs to answer...
It's quite funny, isn't it? There's so many investigations.
There's so many of them already, yes. I think that it needs to answer a range of questions. And I think the fundamental question is, who is responsible? Who is responsible for the kinds of decisions that were taken in that context? And I think that is what the public wants to know, because when you have that coming out, then you can have accountability, then you can have a process of not happening again, of correcting the mistakes, of doing things very differently. As long as we get simply just an explanation, a descriptive analysis, and don't get to the heart of who is responsible and accountable, we're never going to be able to deal with these issues.
Let's assume that this particular report is either swept under the carpet or is swept under the carpet in a dark space and we don't get to see it. In what way can government be compelled to make that information available?
It's very, very difficult. I mean, the only real way, even if we have a Promotion of Access to Information Act, they can refuse to do that. And the only way we can really force government is to go to court. And this is why the irony of the situation is government says civil society is running to the courts all the time in order to get us, and yet they're not leaving civil society within much option oftentimes in order to do that. So that's the only way that we can do that, other than obviously doing things illegally, which is not really on the cards.
What's your gut feeling? Is this going to end up in the courts?
I think so. I mean, it's just like the secrecy bill, like so many other things. It's very unfortunate because it indicates that there is not a transparency across the board.
Explain to us why South Africans should be worried about this report perhaps not seeing the light of day. Bigger picture, what's at stake here?
Oh, well, there's a whole range of things at stake, I think. Personal relationships that are in the back corners, where political favors are being given and special treatment is being given, that upsets a lot of people. Someone was saying to me just recently that, for example, in the Guptas can come into Waterkloof, and yet an ordinary South African citizen will be arrested if they take a picture of Waterkloof. So we have a sense of that there's things that need to be emanate from those reports like that. Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us, independent analyst, and with the Right to Know campaign here on Newsnight, the views of Dale Mckinley.
News that moves. eNCA.com.